This course is brought to you by AppyPie as part of our Academy series.
What I'm going to do now is walk through some foundational elements inside of Thrive Architect. So Thrive Architect works with elements. As you can see, we have foundational that are going to be key to building most websites. And then you also have a bunch of different building blocks. So let's say you wanted to add a custom menu or a divider section. You would just click on that element, hold and drag it to where you want it on your site. And then you get new options for that element and you can change all those different options. What I'm going to do now is, to make it simple, I'm going to load a blank page. To do that, I click on the gear icon and click on Template Setup and change landing page template. I'm going to expand the blank set and just start with a blank page. Now let's get rid of this heading and just take a look at what we've got here. Completely blank slate. If I click save and preview this website, you'll see that there's nothing here. So if someone goes to this address on your website, they're going to see a blank white canvas. And now we can start dragging stuff into it. The first thing I'm going to drag is the heading. So you just click and let go. And as you can see, this heading now lives inside our landing page. And the landing page is the entire page itself. And if I click on landing page, you'll see we have all our options for our landing page. And then if I click on the heading, we have all the options for the heading. And some of the options you'll see on the left-hand side, whereas other options you'll see right here. And with headings, you can add in different heading styles. So you can make it a heading 1 style, heading 2, or whatever other heading you want. You can align it, make it a link, underline it, change the color, change the background color, and so many different things. So I'm not going to walk you through every single option here, because you can just play with these options and you'll immediately understand what's going on. But there are a ton of options here that give you a lot of freedom. And some of the more important ones are changing your font. So if you go to Google Fonts, you can select the font that you decided on earlier inside this course, or just experiment with one and see if you find one you like. You can select the weights that you want that font to be in, and then click apply. And now we've changed that font. You can also add shadows, which are really cool. I mean, this one looks gimmicky, but when you add shadows to boxes in particular, I think it adds a nice effect to your website. And that's the heading element. So you're going to be using the heading element a lot throughout your website. Another common element are paragraphs. So what I'm doing is I'm holding and dragging the paragraph element, and now, depending on where I place it, is where it's going to go. So I can put the paragraph element below the heading, I can put it above the heading, or I can put it to the right of the heading, and it will automatically separate these two elements into two columns, the paragraph column and the heading column. For this example, I'm just going to drag it under the heading, and now delete this column. So what it did is it actually deleted one of the two columns, but it still is living inside of a column element. And to keep things simple, I'm going to drag this paragraph below the column, drag the heading below the column and above the paragraph, and delete this column. And now if I click on the paragraph, we have all the paragraph text options. We can add lists. We have the same text options that we had for the header. Pretty much all of the same options: shadow, borders and corners, background style, etc. And you can also change the font here. So that's the heading, that's the paragraph. Next up are images. So here you can just insert any images you have on your website or upload your own. I'm just going to add in this guy. And there you go. Now you can change all these image options. add different styles, and all this good stuff. Now, I don't want to over-explain this stuff because you can figure this out for yourself at the same speed that I'm sharing it with you. But I just want to get your brain going with the potential for Thrive Architect. I hope you see how powerful this tool really is and start getting creative about what you plan to do with it. So you also have your buttons, and I'm just going to put this below the image, make it large, layout and position. You can have it hover to the left, and bam, there we go. And when you click on the button, you can make it do whatever you want with actions. You can link to another page on your site, another website on the web, or even create pop-ups, which are really cool, but outside the scope of this video. So those are the 4 main elements you'll use most often, most likely. Now, one of the best practices when you create a website is to have everything live inside of a background section. So when I'm creating a website, the first thing that I'll typically do is drop in a background section. And this gives you a lot of freedom. So now if I put in that text, drag the heading inside the background section, and same with the paragraph. If I click on the heading, we'll see that it's inside the background section. And now I can change anything I want here. I can change the color to be this agua color. And let's say you want that color to stretch to the whole screen width, you can do that. But the content will still stay in that 1080 pixel width, which of course you can change. And then you can do the margin and padding for the background section. So typically what you want to do is use multiple background sections for your website. So it's not that you just have one background section and everything lives inside that one background section. Instead, you might say, I want a background section for my header. And let's just say that's red. Then I want another background section, which will be below the header, and it will be the hero image where it's a picture of me. And that's the second background section. Next up are columns, and columns are pretty self-explanatory. So let's say I add a column inside this background section, then I get to choose the layout. And if I want to do in thirds, I just click this, and now we have 3 separate columns. And we can add elements inside of these columns. So say you want to add a heading, there you go. And you can also duplicate this heading and then drag it into the next column. And as you can see, if you click on the heading, in this hierarchy, that heading lives inside of this column. And now we can start adjusting the margin and padding for this column or any of the other options. Then this column lives inside the columns, which is all 3 of these. And here we get new options. We can adjust the gutter width, which is the space in between these columns, the minimum height, and all these other goodies. So I'm starting to remember now when I first was playing with Thrive Architect that this seems like so many options. And I know I'm saying this a lot, so sorry if it sounded repetitive, but really when you play with this, it's gonna take some time to get familiar with it. But once you're familiar with it, it's really, really easy. And a few other things I want to show you are the content boxes. So let's say you have a box here where you put it above the heading, but you want the heading inside this box. It's kind of like a mini background section. That's the way I like to think about it. So now below this heading, I'm going to add an image. And then below this image, I'm going to add a button. So now all of this lives inside of our content box. And we have some new settings for the content box. We can lower the width of the content box, adjust the margin padding, add a shadow to it, duplicate the content box, and everything inside of it is still there. And then we can move that content box, move it outside of the column, and it's still there. Okay, this is such an ugly site, but who cares? That's it for most of the foundational elements. In the next video, I'm going to talk specifically about templates and symbols, because they're really powerful, but a little bit more complicated. With the rest of these building blocks, I'm not going to walk through them because they're pretty self-explanatory. But if you want to add any of these elements to your website, you just drag and drop just like before. And there's some incredible stuff in here. So I encourage you to play around with all these different elements if they apply to your site.